Welcome to this episode of Adam Answers. This week, I just wanted to respond to a question that was given from actually the last Adam Answers. It was written in the comments section. And so Danny Vulture, or at Danny Vulture, sent in a question that I'm going to respond to here. And it says, "Thank you, Adam. Any thoughts when a youth or teen client responds with an I don't know type of reply, as you're trying to weave together their preferred outcome, especially if they were mandated by a parent or service provider along with their preferred outcome? I often find myself getting stuck when a client is forced to come to therapy and I ask them a best hopes question. I notice that they are able to articulate that they no longer want to be in therapy. And when expanded on their preferred outcome, however, because of the mandated status due to parents whom want the child to improve their behavior, they don't progress in treatment because they want to stop coming to therapy altogether." So that is a really, really excellent question, and I'm going to try to break it down into a couple of different parts. The first part that you asked about is the I don't know responses. And one of the things that I would say about that is rarely do they just say, I don't know, over and over and over. They might say like, I don't know, I haven't thought about that yet, or I don't know, I don't even really care, and they'll tag on usually something else as well. And so I would say be really, really careful to listen to what they tag on to the I don't know, because that's going to give you the language in order to customize your next question. If they say, like, I don't know, I've never thought about that before, your next response could be, well, suppose you took a second now to think about it in a way that maybe you haven't ever before. What do you think you'd come up with? Or if they say something like, I don't know, I don't even want to be here, then you could easily pick up the I don't want to be here and say, well, given that you don't want to be here, but you are, if you and I made this time worth its while, what do you think would be the best way to spend this time? And so picking up the other information that they give you tagged on to the I don't know is often a way forward. However, if they just say, I don't know, you can easily just say, well, if you thought about it now, what do you think you'd come up with? Or you could just say, okay, well, let me see if I can ask you a better question. And you just rephrase your question. If you and I did just the right thing here today, what would you hope to get out of this? Or if you and I were able to spend this time in just the right way, what difference would that make to you? Or whatever it is, right? So you customize the question and you just change it over and over and over until they give you some language that you can kind of grasp onto. So that's kind of a bit of how you deal with the I don't know. But then the next part of your question gets to the mandated client perspective. And this is where I would say it's really, really important to shift your perspective to believing where your client's feet are, right? They have a choice, even if their parents bring them here, even if their parents say you have to go, or a mandator says, if you want to get out of jail or if you want to get off of probation, you have to go. They still have a choice. And so instead of believing their words, you believe their feet. They chose to get here. And so you just put all of your trust in that and you say, so since you decided to show up, what are your best hopes from this process? Which leads me then to the next part of your question, which was actually the part where you said, their best hopes are to end therapy altogether. And one of the things that I would say about that is don't buy that. Don't take that as a good desired outcome. That isn't a good desired outcome. That is a strategy to what they really want. So you can ask the follow-up question. And if somehow we convinced your parents that you didn't actually need to come here anymore, or suppose we figured out how to convince your parole officer that therapy was no longer necessary, what difference would that make to you? What would you hope to have at that point? And now they're going to say things like freedom, or I can do whatever I want, or I can whatever. And so now you can be off and running. Ending therapy is a strategy that they want to employ in order to get what they really want: freedom, independence, whatever. And so remember that ending therapy is not the end state that we need in order to have a conversation. So take it a bit farther in your questions to get to a real good desired outcome. Now, there's also embedded in your question, what do you do? Because inherently you have two desired outcomes. You have this kid who's saying, I want to end therapy in order to be free. I'll just tag that on to the end. And the parents are saying, I want my kid to be in therapy. Now remember, if ending therapy isn't a good enough desired outcome, just being in therapy is also not a good desired outcome. We have to say, and if your child came to therapy, what difference would it make? What's the desired outcome there? And then you tagged on into your question, they want behavior to change. And again, I would say, go one step farther. And if they came to therapy and their behavior changed, what difference would that make? What are you really hoping for? Because what they're really hoping for is like obedience or a good attitude or getting things done or all of those kinds of things. And really what they're getting at is, I want my kid to live up to their potential. I want my kid to be able to live a life that's fulfilling. We have to ask follow-up question after follow-up question after follow-up question to get the parents to the place of like, what's the point of therapy? What's the point of the behavior change? What do you want for them to get out of this process? So I think that's a really, really important component. Then I have to do something that you're alluding to in your question, which is combine them. If you get freedom, but it's the kind of freedom that your parents know will lead you to becoming the kind of kid that you're supposed to become, or living up to the potential that you have, what would be the very first sign? So only when we get those two really good desired outcomes can we put them together. But you are absolutely right in your question. We have to put them together. We have to make them be desired outcomes that are not mutually exclusive. I can't have the desired outcome of ending therapy and being in therapy. Those are mutually exclusive things, which tells me I haven't gone far enough. But if I can have freedom and independence and live up to my potential or become the kind of person I'm supposed to become, now those two things can coexist. Oftentimes with kids and parents, it comes down to trust. I want my parents to trust me. And the parent saying, I want to be able to trust my kid. But oftentimes they say it as like, I want them to stop lying, or I want them to do their homework. And they say, I want them to get off my back. I want them to let me play video games all day. And those behaviors are strategies to, I want trust. I want my parents to trust me and let me do what I want. And so we have to ask additional questions to get to desired outcomes that can go together. Sometimes we're going to have to wade through a lot of I don't knows. But again, that's that place where you listen to the extra information they give you and then string those together one right after the other. So hopefully that makes sense. Thanks again for a great question. If any of you have other questions about working with teens, please send them my way. I'll do as many of these videos as we can. But until then, go do great work.